Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augment Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I am your host as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 87 of the show, and well, do a little bit of house cleaning real quick because I love doing the house cleaning at the start of the show because it's always nice. Obviously, I'm actually pretty spent. I still have a lot of brain power left to do the show because the show must go on. But I'm currently just so spent because at the time of this recording, I just finished taking my circuits test for my circuits class. And it was an extremely difficult test. This is why I always say engineering is not for the faint of heart. It is extremely difficult once you start to do more of the weed out classes, and you better be ready because it's not easy. That test was extremely difficult, even though I was well prepared. But aside from that, I did great. I know I did well. I'm happy. I'll be happy with whatever I get as long as it's anything higher than a 75, I'm happy. But aside from that, I'm also working on a project right now for you guys. It's more of a little experiment that I'm working on. And in time, I'll let you guys know. Right now, I'm still working on it. I still need about a week or two to completely finalize everything and, get more of the mojo in, And aside from that, there is a project in the works for y'all, so I hope you guys enjoy it when the time comes, because, yeah, it's really fun, because it's something that I wasn't planning on doing, but it ended up happening, and it's actually really cool. Aside from that, obviously, we know what we're talking about today, because, you guys voted on the poll. Today, we're going to be talking about the Samsung Unpacked event, and basically, this is a recap. But I'm going to do something a little bit differently because realistically, I'm not just going to go through a spec list and read off every spec of all the new phones they announced because, look, if you want to do that, just go on YouTube and you'll find a ton of videos. People have already beat me to the punch. But what I'd rather do, or realistically what I'd rather do, is I want to give my thoughts on why this was an important year for Samsung. But at the same time, it still doesn't change my opinions on some things. And we all understand why. So, going into it, because I want to go in terms of order of, I wouldn't say least significant to most significant. I'd rather go in an order of, hey, this is something that I find cool. Because realistically, all the things they announced at the Unpacked event, which surprisingly, if you break it down into 3 categories, it was only 3 things, 3 products. New Galaxy Buds, the S20 series, and then the Z Flip. So I want to start with the Galaxy Buds because this is a good jumping off place, because obviously Samsung, as you guys all remember, launched the Galaxy Buds, with the S series, with the S10 series, and it was very popular. A lot of people liked it, but there's still some downsides to it. So they actually made the Plus versions, and obviously TechCrunch does a good way of breaking down or really just summing up everything so it makes it easy. And, so I want to read a little bit and then, go into my thoughts about them because I have some pretty decent thoughts about them. So obviously in the TechCrunch article, they say Samsung's answer to Apple's AirPods are getting an upgrade. While the Galaxy Bud Plus look pretty much identical to the original Buds, they already quite solid, sound quality could be improved across the board. Obviously, they talk about how the Galaxy Buds Plus changed the driver system. So instead of a single driver, they go to a dual driver system, and then also bumping up the number of microphones from 2 to 3. They also talk about how the battery life on a single charge can last for 11 hours, which is pretty incredible, And then obviously they talk about how the companion case gives an extra 11 hours of charge. And then if you have a Galaxy phone, then the power share feature where you can wirelessly charge your earbuds with your phone. And, that's a great thing. In terms of price, they actually are very competitively priced at $149, which that's a really good deal, to be honest. And I'm actually surprised Samsung decided to do an update, but it makes sense because, Apple, they upgraded the original AirPods and made the Plus, and they made the Gen 2 AirPods with wireless charging, but then they also made the Pros, which obviously the Pluses are not supposed to compete with the Pros necessarily, but I know a lot of people will be doing comparisons. Shout out to El Jefe, because I know he did a video comparing the Galaxy Buds Plus to the AirPods Pro. So if you really want to compare them, I'd go, recommend listening to Jefe and, listening to Jefe's thoughts and see what he has to say, because, the brother, when it comes to wireless audio, you're going to want to talk to Jefe because, he's Jefe for a reason. But aside from that, obviously we go into more of the juicier bits because, So we're going to talk about the Galaxy S20 line. This is a very interesting year, clearly, because Samsung did not compromise with these phones. They legit went all out. There is not a single thing that, besides a headphone jack, obviously, that these cameras are lacking realistically these phones are lacking, because these things are behemoths with what Samsung did, because they really didn't compromise and they actually made some improvements in areas that should have been improved on. And so let's talk about it. So obviously in terms of the Galaxy line this year, we obviously have 3 phones now. That we have the S20, the S20 Plus, and then the S20 Ultra. The Ultra is the new big phone. Like, this thing is a mammoth of how massive this phone is. And obviously, in terms of specs, these phones are incredibly well spec'd out. Like, we're literally talking about a very diverse camera array that also has some very interesting sensors that, very, very good sensors, if I may say. In terms of specs, we're looking at a range between 12 to 16 gigabytes of RAM. Jesus Christ. Like, the base model, the S20 starts at a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, and then the Ultra goes up to 5,000. Like, in terms of display sizes, we're talking about, 6.4 inch, 6.7 inch, and then a massive, or actually, no, my bad. The S20 is a 6.2 inch, and then the Ultra is a 6.9 inch. All of them run at 120 hertz. Now, granted, that's capped at 1080p because, reasons. And then they also, in terms of the display response time, it's actually doubled to 240 hertz. So it's able to feel much smoother. In terms of specs, obviously, yes, these phones are obviously going to have the latest and greatest specs of this year. The fact that the Ultra is going to have 16 gigabytes of RAM is insane, because most gaming laptops sell at 16 gigabytes of RAM. So that's insane that they're putting 16 gigabytes of RAM in a phone. Like, I know OnePlus is going to do it pretty soon with their phone. So where do I begin with this? Because obviously, in terms of pricing, yes, Samsung did not compromise, but these phones are extremely pricey. And it makes sense because people wanted all these things in the phone. And to put all these things into a phone, you got to pay top dollar. The fact that they all have 5G and no 4G, which the 4G model is only for, other markets besides the US. I think that's kind of crappy, but, I get it. They're trying to push 5G more in the US, even though, yes, 5G is still half baked. And it won't be ready for another 2 to 3 years. And by that point, your phone's already outdated anyway. So it doesn't really matter. But when I look at these phones, I think this is a great step forward for Samsung in terms of, they're actually giving people what they want. And there were some changes that I actually were surprised that they did with these phones that nobody really talks about. How the displays on these phones are actually not as curved as they normally are, that they're actually more flat, which is great. That means for screen protectors, it's going to make it a little bit more screen protector friendly. So that's a good thing. Like, I prefer flat displays over curved any day of the week because even though, yes, I get it. They talk about immersion and all this other jazz. It doesn't really mean much when it's your phone just having a giant reflection that just, it just reflects so much. And it gets annoying, like a lot annoying. And, but I think the fact that they made them flat this year, or at least more flat instead of, going even further, like going crazy, like with what Huawei did, I think this is a good step forward for them. I'm very happy about this change. The fact that, another change is the battery life too, because the fact that the base model, the S20 is 4,000 milliamps, that's great. Let's see how, I hope it's a battery champ, because the Ultra, in theory, should be a battery champ, but it really just depends, because it's a massive 6.9 inch display, 120 hertz, even though, yes, it's 1080p. It's still 120 hertz. It drains battery life pretty quickly. And, oh boy, Samsung really went overboard. Now, in terms of pricing, yes, these are very expensive phones, which leads into another decision that they decide to make, where they actually are continuing to sell the S10 line. Now, granted, at reduced pricing, and the fact that the Plus is now $749 is really, really enticing, because a lot of people, if they're comparing the S20 Plus to the Note 10 Plus, a lot of people really prefer the S10 Plus over the Note 10 Plus, because it keeps the headphone jack. You're basically getting the same display. You don't get the S Pen, but you still get the same camera array, the same features. Nothing's really different. And, it's crazy to think about it, that we're getting the same great flagships we have from last year, because I really like the S10 line. I think it was a good year for Samsung to make, those phones are great, and I get why a lot of people like them. Now, granted, I know what a lot of people are going to say when it comes to Samsung phones is that software is a very, very buggy thing. Well, not in terms of the software is buggy. It's more of that software updates are going to be very, very interesting to see how they happen, because, obviously, yes, these phones are meant to be considered future-proof, but software updates with Samsung are not the best thing. I know they're getting better at it, but they're still not the best. So, take that as you will. And granted, yes, these phones are very expensive. The fact that the S20 starts at $999, the S20 Plus starts at $1199, and that the big Ultra starts at $1399, which John Prosser got these prices right on. He actually confirmed these prices beforehand with his sources, and a lot of people were getting mad at him. They were like, hey, this isn't right. It's definitely not going to be this. You're dumb. And, well, he was right, so lol. So get over it. John has his sources, and he's very credible, and I applaud him for being accurate, and, I'm glad that he was right. Now, granted, we knew these phones were going to be pricey because of what they were wanting to do with them. And yes, like I said, I'm not going to go into the specs of these phones, because if you really want a spec dive, just run a spec rundown realistically, just go watch another video. There's plenty on YouTube. I know a lot of YouTubers have already posted their reactions, their hands-on, et cetera, et cetera. But mine is more focused on actually, analyzing what does this mean. And for me, I think Samsung made a good move with what they did. This is the first year that they made three phones of the S series starting off, and I think it was a good change of pace. I hope they don't do this every year. I hope maybe every 2 years. Make another Ultra, and et cetera, that they keep it on the down low. Don't make an Ultra every single year. Make an SE again. A lot of people liked the S10e. They really liked it, and it obviously sold well, and it was a great phone too for the money. And the fact that they actually decided to keep last year's flagship still around, I think that's a great option, because it allows people to get a flagship experience without having to spend the absolute top dollar. Because the S10 Plus is still a great phone. Still has great the A55 is still a great processor. Still has a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. Still a great display. Plenty of accessories available. That's not a debate. And it's going to be interesting, because obviously a lot of people are saying, does it make sense to buy an iPhone 11 or an S10 Plus? So it's at that point, it's going to be a good bargain to talk about, what makes sense. And I think this is a smart move for Samsung because they actually compromised, but they also didn't compromise on the big ships, or let's call them the big daddy phones. They didn't want to compromise. And I think that's what made it special. And I'm very happy, I think this is going to be a great year for Samsung. I'm happy that they did well. But there is another thing. There was another phone. And this is where I say that my opinion has changed slightly, but still not completely. And we're going to talk about the Galaxy Z Flip. I've already gone on record multiple times and said that foldable phones are stupid. I think that in our current day and age, we should not be pushing for foldable phones, and because they're still not practical. It doesn't make sense. Now, with that said, the Z Flip is the most polished foldable phone we have ever gotten. And it's funny, and John Prosser even pointed this out, it's funny that it came from the company that gave us the least unpolished foldable phone. Which, granted, I think Motorola might have those odds taken a little bit, and I think it'll be funny to see how that plays out. But I don't know. I think it's very interesting to think about, When I think about the Galaxy Flip, man, I really like how the phone looks. Like, yes, it reminds me, obviously, yes, it looks like the Moto Razr because, Motorola made the Razr, their foldable phone. And yes, granted, it doesn't have the same incredible specs, but the Z Flip definitely is the most polished foldable phone we've gotten because a lot of people haven't pointed this out. And John Prosser pointed this out. And I actually caught this because it was very important. It's a very important detail. It is the first foldable phone that actually bends glass. That it actually is a thin piece of glass. It's not plastic. It's the first foldable phone that doesn't rely on plastic and it's actual glass. It's all glass. And I think that's very impressive that Samsung polishes design, that it looks great. Like, if you look at the photos, this thing looks amazing. Like, this looks amazing. But that being said, I still don't believe foldable phones are the future because it doesn't make sense. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I always say foldable devices, it makes sense to fold tablets. It makes sense to fold laptops. But with the smartphone, it's just a weird trend that we've started, that it just doesn't make so much sense. And I get it. Yes. And I know you guys are going to get on my grill for this. Yes, I get it. The Z Flip is amazing. This thing looks amazing. Like, the way how everything works, the fact that they made their own UI for it, and it's like the way it just seamlessly goes together, and the fact that it looks gorgeous. Like, I get it. I still don't think foldable phones are the future. I still don't. I think that this is just a phase that we're going through, and it's just going to go away. Because think about it, like, it's a natural progression of things. And this is just a phase. Like, that's how I view it. Because I don't think going in the foldable direction, because it's still just beta products. They're still not fully fledged products. Like, I get it. Yes, this is a polished phone. It's very polished. But it's still not 100% ready because, there's still flaws. It's an innate flaw with the concept itself. That, I like how John Prosser put it, is that he's not mad that the phones are flawed. He's mad that the concept itself is flawed to begin with. That it's a flawed concept that just cannot work because, and it's a flawed concept. And until we, realize this, we're going to keep getting flawed products. Because yes, I even like how John Prosser pointed out that the same tech community that applauds these phones, that applauds foldable technology, is the same community that's going to do stupid stuff to break them. you know, like CNET when they published an article where they put it on a machine and just constantly kept bending the phone like rapid fire. And it's like, no, that's not how real use case is. That's you doing an artificial test that does not simulate how real life usage works, you know, because you're doing it at a specific angle and just constantly going. And of course it's going to break. Like, you know, it's very interesting that the tech community likes to flip flop a lot, you know, like they like something for a moment and then they immediately go to the next hot thing, you know, and it's like, you get what I mean? Like, that's why I say this is just a phase. That foldable phones are cool right now, and then, you know, as time goes on, it's like, these things aren't so cool anymore, and just move on. I mean, granted, yes, I think the Z Flip is going to do better than the Fold, because the Fold, even though, yes, it is more polished in terms of it compared to its competition, it's still not a perfect phone. It's still, like, I still don't recommend buying it. I think anybody that buys it, like, I'm sorry, but it's not a good purchase. It really isn't. Like, I would, and the fact that the Z Flip is actually cheaper, like by half, because the Z Flip is going to start at $1,380, which, yeah, that's still a very pricey phone. Like, it's only $20 less than the Ultra. So, you know, a lot of people are saying, why is there a $20 difference? And it's like, about that. But I'm overall happy with how Samsung handled this year, because they made it straight. They got to the point. Obviously, yes, there's some big things happening. The fact that Netflix is partnering with Samsung to make exclusive content and optimizing it for the new hardware. You know, the fact that, you know, the Spotify agreement and everything like that. The fact that they have a partnership with Microsoft to work on, to, you know, have xCloud and that, you know, the xCloud. That's going to be great, especially with a smartphone. Because when you think about the new phones, obviously the Ultra is meant for the big photographer, like the professional photographer, the big game, like it's meant to be the big heavy hitter, like be all end all. Like you buy this phone because you're going all in. And yes, it's expensive. It is going to be expensive. We're not going to stand here and say that this phone is supposed to be cheap. It's not meant to be cheap. This phone is meant to cost some money. And you're getting a lot of value for that money. Now, granted, I still wouldn't recommend buying it because, you know, like buying the S20 Ultra is a very, very special person. Like, I would say it's meant for a very special person. It's not meant for everybody. It clearly isn't. And it just comes down to what your use case is. And if you can justify it for, you know, if you can justify it for yourself, you know, because I can't tell you what to do with your money, but it definitely is for a very special use case. The same thing applies for the Z Flip. The Z Flip is not for it's not for everyone. It's meant for a specific group of people that want that form factor. And yeah, there's some people that do, because they're the same people that like the Razor. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens, you know? Like, I'm happy with how this event turned out. Like, I think it was a win overall for Samsung. It was a great win, and it's a great way to start the year for them. And realistically, I think this is going to be very interesting to see what Samsung does. Especially because, yes, at the end of the year, we're expecting either a Note or a Galaxy Fold 2. And it wouldn't surprise me if Samsung decides to merge the Fold and the Note together and just make, you know, that the new flagship enthusiast, like the one that has the S Pen and everything, and just make it unique. Overall, I'm happy with how this event turned out. Like I said, Samsung made great compromises where it needed to be made, but it also didn't compromise in terms of what they showed off, because the Galaxy Buds Plus for $150, that's going to be a great deal. Like I said, go watch Hefe's video. Hefe is going to be doing a lot of coverage on them, you know, giving his details, you know, like breaking them down. And in terms of the S20 line, we're just going to wait and see after a couple months how they hold up, you know, how people enjoy using them. And, you know, like, because granted, they're great phones. And I think they'll definitely be, you know, they might end up winning. Like even Marquez joked about it, that they might end up winning most improved, that Samsung could win most improved already because of how much they improved these phones in important areas in terms of battery life, display, and camera. That they improved drastically. Now, granted, we still have OnePlus coming with the OnePlus 8 this year. We also have, the Pixel 5. We still haven't gotten the Pixel 4a yet, so we're still waiting on that. We know we're getting the new iPhones this year as well. We know we're getting a new LG phone this year, which the LG I think it's the V60, looks very incredible for what we're seeing. Some leaked specs that I'm actually very interested in it. I'm not going to get it, but I'm interested because I'm paying attention to what's going on and what's being, leaked about it. It's going to be very interesting. This is going to be an interesting year for smartphones. Again, my opinion still hasn't changed about foldable phones. I still think they're dumb. Still not my cup of tea. Like, they look cool. Like I've said multiple times in this episode, I love the Z Flip. I love what they did with this thing. This thing looks amazing. This is definitely what a foldable phone of today should look like, but it's still not for everyone because, as we mentioned, the concept itself is flawed. It just doesn't work on a fundamental level. But you guys are allowed to have your opinions. I have my opinion, and you're allowed to listen to anybody else's opinion, And overall, my takeaway is that this was a great event, and I'm happy with how it turned out. I know a lot of my peers went to the event. Hefe was there, and, Mr. Mobile was there. I don't know. Juan was just, tweeting from his house. Because, Juan, he's not getting invited to events because, he tells it how it is. So, but it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how Samsung can continue this momentum going into the rest of the year. And we'll see how good these phones sell. And we'll see how good they really are in real world use, But that's all I got for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Yes, I know it was more of a recap, but in reality, I did my best to make it a recap, but also give my opinion and give my own flavor into it and not just, regurgitate specs. Because, like I said, if you really want to do spec rundowns, just go watch YouTube videos. Like, I don't know how many have already popped up on your feeds at this point about these phones. But I hope you guys enjoyed my opinions on the event. If you watch the event, let me know what you think. Obviously, again, thank you guys so much for coming back and listening to the show and sharing. It really means a lot to me. And yes, I know right now I'm still pretty tired. And I just want to relax. I definitely worked hard this week. I gave you guys 2 episodes and studied for 2 tests that were very challenging in their own rights. And, I get to relax a little bit now. But again, thank you guys so much for coming back and listening and, giving me your time. It really means a lot to me. I love you guys to death. Please be safe this weekend. Don't do anything dumb. And I'll see you guys next week. And, like I said, the news is picking up. And I have a project in the pipeline for y'all. So I love you guys. Bye. Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.